immensely. I really.
Births. And you can make it a long answer, tie in about 3 or 4 aspects. You can tie in what a joyful event it was, that it happened at home, oftentimes not in hospitals, midwives. And as a result of that, there were a fair percentage of little babies that died. And then about the mother that, you know, she got right up after the baby and went back to business. And that there was this thing about pre and postnatal care. There wasn't much of that going on. I think we're about ready. So if you want to just begin, and we'll give it a stab and see what we come up with.
How am I going to know when to stop?
Just when you're finished. Just,
okay.
Just talking to you right now. And if it gets to be too long, I'll just cut you off. But I doubt that's going to be the case. You go ahead.
Okay. Well, there was only, at one time, there was only one hospital in the area. So most of the babies were born at home. And we usually knew when this was about to happen because all the children were rounded up and sent down the block. And there were 2 or 3 women that always showed up, you know, around about that time that we knew delivered the babies. And the babies came, and some of them lived and some of them died because there was no doctor there. Sometimes the doctor would come afterwards and sort of check on the mother and the baby, but I would say that well, I don't know whether more of them died than lived or not, but some of them did die. And then as time went on, the hospital came, and that all changed. The mother was taken care of. For instance, she'd probably go to the doctor every month and be checked on. And then when the babies were born, they were checked, not nearly as carefully as they are now, but the ones that were premature or too little died. Now they have the incubators to put them in, and it makes it much different. And the doctor checks the baby every month and makes it's quite nice now.
1:30.
Other end of the spectrum.
Okay.
About how the funerals were conducted, we want to give the people the idea that, you know, the parlor, the body was kept in the parlor, people came to the home, it was a wake, and also, even though it was a funeral, in one sense a sad occasion, on the other sense it was a happy occasion because it gave family members, maybe they hadn't seen each other for a while, it became almost a family reunion. Anything that comes to mind about funerals back then that distinguish it from today's funerals?
Well, in those days there were no funeral parlors as such. And so when somebody died, they were kept at home, and all the families came from all around and friends, and there was somebody that stayed there all night until the funeral, and then the service was held. And afterwards they came back to the house and ate, and was while it was a sad time, it was also a time when families got together. There was one young man that I knew that said it seemed to him the only time they ever had any fun was when they went to the wakes. And that was about the only time they ever saw most of the family. And then gradually, of course, the funeral homes came, and some of the burials were there. There were very few funerals in the early days in the churches. But now they have, in the churches, they have funerals, but the funeral homes get most of them. And the one who dies is made up to look as nearly natural as possible. And that's about all I can think of. Usually a preacher is there to conduct the funerals, but in the old days sometimes that wasn't possible. And some member of the family would, or a neighbor would, conduct the funeral service.
Fine. That was about a minute into how silver was given and all this kind of stuff, and how they kind of picked out what they wanted people to give them, and how that's changed now with the cost of everything going up. And also, you might include, that, just like you did on the others, that the weddings tended to be at home, or didn't you tell me that you go to church and then all of a sudden they just announce that stay here, we're going to have a wedding afterwards. Anything that comes to mind about the weddings?
All right. Most of the weddings in the early days were, there was always 1 or 2 churches in every little town, and they'd be in the churches because the houses weren't big enough. And the gifts were brought to the wedding, like feather beds and pillows and linens and that sort of thing. And then gradually, the weddings went on in the churches, but invitations were sent out, and the brides went downtown early and picked out the things they wanted, like the sterling and the silver, and the jewelers or the department stores would have tables set up with the sterling and the crystal and silver plate if the people couldn't afford the sterling. Then high prices came, and the sterling was practically priced out of anybody's, and the plate was high. So now there's a lot of stainless steel. The girls still pick out what the stainless steel they want, but that takes the place of the silver and the high. Then the linens, they still pick out their linens, but not as not as expensive as they used to be. And they always, I think, there have been honeymoons. Some couples couldn't, maybe because of business reasons or money, lack of money, wouldn't go on honeymoons, but they mostly did. And as far as weddings are concerned, just the wedding ceremony itself, it hasn't changed much. There was one couple that I knew that everybody knew they were going to get married, but they didn't know when. And so one Sunday, after the service was over, the preacher said, "Now, if everybody will just keep their seats, we're going to have a marriage." And he married this couple there right after the church service, with all the church there. And of course, in the earlier days in the little town, everybody came to the weddings. And now, of course, the banns have to be published in the Catholic Church and the Episcopal Church. And then many times they'll say, "Now the wedding's going to be so-and-so," and everybody's invited.
Fine, that's real good, Aunt Lil. That would, see, just the person before and Aunt Lil here has given me enough to make up the difference. I've got 2 more scheduled for tomorrow, but instead of having too little, I have too much. Which is the way you like to have it.
Yeah.
This couldn't have been easier for you, huh?
No, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. I didn't know. I was afraid I'd get tongue-tied and couldn't talk.